30 million people using SAS annually. It operates 182 aircrafts, flying to over 90 destinations, and has over 13,000 employees. Currently, SAS is the 9th largest airline in Europe and received the Best European Airline Award 2 years consecutively in 2014 and 2015. Furthermore, it was the first airline to fly over the North Pole, and therefore it also has some level of popularity with the Hollywood celebrity.
Now to look at the effect of deregulation on the market for airlines. Removing laws on a particular market leads to the market becoming more competitive. This is because more firms are allowed to compete. By looking at the market structure of the airline industry, both pre- and post-deregulation provides an interesting viewpoint.
As you can see on the graphs, these two graphs show the pre-deregulation structure and post-deregulation structures. The orange lines show the market demand, and the blue one as the market supply. Originally shown by pre-regulation, the price is set at peak. As there's less regulation, the supply of airlines will increase.
This is shown by the outward shift in supply from S to S1, which causes Q to increase to Q1. This increase in supply causes the price to fall from P to P1. The decrease in price was estimated to be around 30% between 1978 and the early 1990s. The main focus here is looking at the effect a change in supply has on the price and quantity.
This slide outlines the other main factors that have contributed to the relative performance of both SAS and Ryanair. To begin with, the most crucial factor is their business models. The slide outlines a number of factors each of the airlines have said they focus on.
Firstly, the CEO of SAS, Richard Gustafson, mainly focuses on the quality of service over cost, and in doing so, is constantly aiming to improve their punctuality. This is illustrated by 90% of their flights arriving on time in 2010. Their little focus on cost minimization has meant that they have had to enforce a number of cost reduction programs. For example, the figure quoted by Guardian of 800 jobs being cut by the airline in 2012 in a bid to turn the company around.
In comparison, Michael O'Leary, the CEO of Ryanair, has a low-cost strategy. The company's use of economies of scale has enabled them to lower their average fares by 4% throughout 2014. This cost minimisation approach includes their no-frills policy, which means that customers have to pay for any extras, such as their overpriced onboard food, with a bottle of water costing £2.20. Although slightly over the top, the next video highlights this.
Welcome aboard. It's 2007, and we are more committed to your safety than ever. And that's why we'd like you to pay careful attention to this important safety information. First, please make sure that your seatbelt is securely fastened. Seatbelts can be purchased for $5. To fasten, insert the metal fitting into the buckle and tighten the buckle by pulling the loose end away from you. To release, purchase a release flap for $7. Now I know what you're thinking. We've never paid for seatbelts before. Once we've reached our cruising altitude, your flight attendant may or may not go down the aisle with snacks. If she chooses to, each passenger will be given a single peanut. Lavatories are located at the front and the rear of the airport. Should there be a rapid change in cabin pressure, oxygen masks will automatically drop from the compartment above your seat, free of charge. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. And to start the flow of oxygen, pay your flight attendant $75.63. As always, exact change is appreciated. Now I know that some of you are still concerned about getting there safely. Enjoy your flight.
An idea highlighted by Michael O'Leary's statement of what part of no refund policy do you not understand. The outcome of this particular business model has led to significant increases in the efficiency of the airline and can be demonstrated by their 25-minute plane turnaround on their short-haul journeys.
All publicity is good publicity. This statement, made by O'Leary, leads on to the next factor that has influenced the performance of the two airlines in the past decade. And this is their marketing strategies. These differ immensely due to contrasting characteristics of the two CEOs. SAS's customer base is primarily made up of frequent travellers who prefer an easier and more time-efficient journey. This includes both tourists and businessmen, as demonstrated in their advertisement.
On the other hand, Ryanair have a very different strategy and direct their marketing on the phrase all publicity is good publicity. Their CEO, Michael O'Leary, is a very controversial character and can be used to illustrate their marketing by many of the statements he has been quoted saying. For example, people say the customer is always right, but you know what, they're not. Sometimes they're wrong and they need to be told so.
So, attracting a very different customer base, consisting of people who are purely looking at a process of travel rather than service provided alongside. However, this strategy has been extremely beneficial to the performance of Ryanair of the last decade, particularly throughout the financial crisis.
Thirdly, the global recession is a fundamental factor in determining performances of airlines over recent years. A global recession is a period of economic downturn consisting of 2 or more periods of decline of GDP in many countries worldwide. This has contributed to the growth of Ryanair and the struggle of SAS. The reason for this struggle is due to low-cost airlines being an inferior good, therefore benefiting hugely from increases in the number of customers who can no longer afford to travel with the more upmarket airlines, such as SAS. This is shown by the yield in SAS falling by 5.2% in 2009.
The shift in the trend has enabled the profits of Ryanair to continuously increase, with a 200% increase in profits in 2009 to a figure of £318 million. The graph you see here shows Ryanair's quarterly profits, although in recent years there have been a few decreases in their profits, such as in the third quarter of 2009, but the general trend of profits is continuously increasing. All in all, the performance of Ryanair has thrived due to recession because of their low fares and business model, whereas the relative performance of SAS has declined.
There have been many factors in the past few decades that have influenced the general airline industry. One of the most important ones was the 9/11 terrorist attack on the World Trade Center in New York. As a result, all airlines across the world were affected by it. Global passenger traffic, which is measured by revenue per passenger per kilometre, declined by 2.7%. Oil costs rose from 13% of overall costs to 30%, and in general, airlines lost over $13 billion. A few airlines also went bankrupt within a few months of the attack. Swissair and Sabena are 2 examples of these, as they were already financially weak beforehand, and this caused them to collapse.
The management style used by Ryanair is called centralised functional structure, which includes a total of 11 directors on their board. They're appointed by the nomination committee with the approval of existing board members and the election of shareholders. Currently, their CEO is Michael O'Leary, who was promoted to this position in 1994. For Ryanair, the main decisions are taken in Ireland. Each senior manager is required to hand reports to the CEO for decision making. Once the decision is made, it transfers from the CEO to the senior manager, then to 57 bases across Europe.
SAS has the governments of Sweden, Norway, and Denmark as the 3 biggest shareholders, which is in total 49%. Also, Knut and Alice Wallenberg's foundation has 7.6% of shares, and some small shareholders have the remaining 42.4%. Each shareholder is involved in the decision-making process, with each share representing 1 vote for 1 decision.
Therefore, the more shares, the more power. The result of this voting system is based on the majority number, so the 3 biggest shareholders, in this case, Sweden, Norway and Denmark, have the greatest power to control the vote. Therefore, we can say they are the decision maker for SAS.
The graph here shows the share price of SAS and Ryanair during economic crisis during 2008 to 2013. The blue line, which is downward sloping, represents the share price for SAS. As you can all see, they had the highest share price of €18 at the beginning of 2008. After a 5 years decline, the price per share fell less than €2 per share.
On the other hand, the pink line shows the price per share for Ryanair's stock. Positive trend grew from approximately €11 per share to €16 per share over a period of 5 years, showing a 45% increase. The trend is impressive considering the fact that the company thrived in a period of economic decline. It is evident from the graph that the two companies have opposite trends, giving an idea of the success or failure of either airline.
Having outlined and explained all the effects and consequences of the deregulation laws in the 1990s, it is significantly important to understand the plans for the future of Ryanair and SAS in order to gain further insights into the management of the companies.
Between December 2013 and January 2014, the Scandinavian airline has had to cut down further costs by establishing a cost-cutting program. This sudden change has taken place due to the increasing loss in the last quarter of 2013, whereas in total, $120.5 million. The latest CEO of the company, Richard Gustafson, is basing his new management strategies around improving the efficiency of the airline in an attempt to reduce costs to a minimum.
The attempt to use biomass resources to replace sand and fuel is one of the main goals for SAS. Progress has been seen with a collaborative study that started in 2008, which will allow the company to save between 10 and 20% on fuel when completed. Also, this will improve the public image of the company, supporting the fact that they are thought to be the most environmentally conscious airline in Europe. The introduction of winglets, as shown by the blue triangle part of the wing, will be implemented later on this year. These are a new form of highly aerodynamic shapes for aircraft wings. Alone, they could save up to 12% on fuel on long-distance flights.
Gustafson stated, "Until we get a better regulatory environment, there will continue to be inefficiencies. This is why SAS are attempting to accelerate the integration of Single European Sky, a change in regulation that would allow all airlines to be managed through a single coordinated traffic control system."
Benefits for both SAS and Ryanair would include the reallocation of routes, allowing a reduction of fuel consumption up to 12%, considering that the fuel alone is about 20–25% of costs for the company. The maneuver would help the reduction of fares for flights for consumers.
Similarly to SAS, Ryanair also will be maintaining the fixed goal to keep prices down to a minimum in order to remain competitive in the market. However, their strategies don't consider a single European sky as a short-term goal.
One of the main threats to the company will be maintaining profits stable or increasing them. This is something that Ryanair has been failing to do recently, regardless of the constant increase in revenues and customers. This decline in profit has caused Ryanair to lose over 13% of its stock's value in 2013.
O'Leary is also concerned for the business as its reputation could weaken the public's opinion of the airline's brand. O'Leary himself stated recently, "I'm getting in the way," referring to the fact that he might be hindering customer relations due to his ways of doing.
Looking at further possible threats company may have in the future, it will have to pay particular attention to the labour laws throughout Europe. Their attempt to lower prices consistently could come into conflict with these laws as it has done recently. In October 2014, Ryanair lost an appeal for breaking French labour laws since they hired 127 local staff on Irish contracts. The company was fined over €8.3 million to be paid to trade unions. This has had a strong impact on the company in terms of financial losses and negative publicity.
Regardless of these occurrences, Ryanair still remains one of the fastest expanding companies in Europe and with revenues constantly increasing. With the CEO stepping out of the public spotlight, the company also plans to regain some of its market share value, hoping that the public's view will take a positive turn.
As we have seen, future laws throughout Europe will bring massive changes to how firms set their prices, and for some will allow costs to be minimised, whilst others will hinder their growth. Both airlines will be greatly affected by these laws, and it will be down to good managerial decisions to gain from them. It will be interesting to see the performance of these airlines in the future. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we had some technical issues with the video, unfortunately. Otherwise, it would have been a minute longer. Any questions?
do you think the companies are going to deal with depleting stocks for oil in the future? And where do you think the industry is going to go in 20, 30 years' time?
SAS has been focusing on alternative methods of achieving renewable fuel for aviation. They've been focusing on using biomass in the future. They've been conducting a research since 2008 with other 3 companies, which is having good progresses, and they're expecting to implement these new fuels within the next few years. That's at least right. SAS assuming Ryanair will be heading in the same direction.
What else? There's so many budget airlines in the market, so why do you think SAS isn't changing their company, like the way they're working to a budget airline, so their shares would probably go higher?
Budget airlines are obviously really useful for people who are on a budget, but some people generally prefer the quality to quantity, basically. So they prefer better service to cheaper service. So SAS is still a market, as you know, just like Emirates and like all sorts of very expensive airlines, just because some people prefer quality to cheaper.
I think that SAS's aim, the customer aim, is not really aiming for cheap flights, but rather businessmen and travellers who don't mind spending the extra money to get richer service.
We had an advert to show for SAS, unfortunately, that we couldn't see it, but from the video it's really clear that their main focus is businessmen a lot of the time, and if your company's going to pay for your flight, why would you choose Ryanair over SAS? So.
Then how would SAS, what should they do to improve the sales? Because it seems like they don't have a high growth right now. Like, what's their strategy to do that?
I think they are trying to reduce their prices slightly, but they're also focusing on quality at the same time. So they've introduced like cost reduction schemes and like made a lot of people redundant.
They're not planning to become a cheap airline, but they are planning to lower the prices in the same proportion as Ryanair probably does and other cheap low-cost travel.
And they're also targeting people who are really conscious about environment, because they're doing those new winglets and the fuel. So they're developing new ways of making it more environmentally friendly, the actual like process of flying. So there's a lot of people who are very environmentally conscious. So obviously for those people that would be more important to fly with SAS rather than
How do you think Ryanair's efforts are going to become like a more sociable, more sort of easy experience? Are they going to affect it at all? Do you think their reputation's already built up to the point where they can't really shake the fact that they're a cheap airline that not really like to fly?
I think their main aim is to get the cheapest flights possible, getting passengers from one point to the other. They don't really care about the image there. I mean, the whole point the CEO in the interview was talking about how their only aim is to get extremely low cost flights. So I don't think their aim is actually to make the journey pleasant. Obviously, they're going to be trying to make it pleasant in the way we can maintaining low costs. But
And also with the CEO like Michael O'Leary, they definitely do not care about negative publicity there.
And looking at their ways of marketing, they're very much focused on cheap price, and they're like that's all they focused on. Whereas SAS, they looked at different angles, so like the quality, the comfort, the time, all like that experience. Whereas Ryanair, all they seemed to focus on was the price.
for them, people complaining about how not very about their airline is only good publicity. It's only good for them. I mean, they just attract more and more attention to themselves that way.
Any other questions?
Okay, let me ask you then, do you think there are any benefits to having a regulated airline industry? We've looked here at how deregulation has affected two airlines, but do you think there were any advantages to having a regulated airline industry?
Yeah, well, I think particularly for SAS there were advantages, because I think they got international, their country allowed them to have certain runways, which when the deregulation was taking place, got rid of them, and so led to their decline.
I'd say yes, because now it's just a price war. to who can get the lowest price, so then quality is out the window. Whereas if it's regulated and the government can control perhaps the level of like comfort in flight, then airlines have no choice but to adhere to the rules. So you probably would get a higher level of quality for that reason.
Anything else? Is there any other advantages of having a regulated industry? I agree with you. I think your standard of service and your general consistency in that sort of area is more constant. Any other advantages to a regulated industry?
Well, safety as well, because
Yeah,
it's safer because airlines are not they're spending more money on safety rather than saving money on that, and spending money on something else, so it's safer to fly.
Potentially.
And you probably could argue that if there's a centralised base rather than all the different airlines kind of working on their own, not always collaborating, it might be easier actually to have a central hub rather than splitting out work.
Thank you. What extent do you think Ryanair's success, we had a similar question about this on Dyson the other week, but to what extent do you think Ryanair's success is linked to having their maverick leader in the form of O'Leary?
Well, he definitely is a controversial character, so some people like him, some people don't. We've watched the documentary on Ryanair, and one lady said that if Michael O'Leary was ruling the country, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in. Some people genuinely love Michael O'Leary, and they think that he's the best thing that happened to the airline industry. On the other hand, he definitely attracts attention, whether it's positive attention or negative attention, so that's another sort of advertising and marketing strategy for Ryanair. And yeah, so
I could argue that I didn't know, I hadn't heard of SAS before we started researching it, but Ryanair, although I didn't have very good opinions on it before, I knew of it. So because there's so many airlines out there, you've got to compete to be a known one, because I still think even if you're known, people probably would tend to go to you because they've heard of you before, regardless of whether you're actually good or bad.
What about his time with Southwestern? Did you look at that at all, and the ideas he brought back from there? And why do you think European governments have supported their national flag carriers now, even in the face of low-cost competition? Why aren't they just saying we're going to go to the cheapest and we're going to put more money in? Because it's not just SAS who find the same as other national flag carriers.
partly it's maybe due to low-cost carriers being EasyJet and Ryanair mostly. They're not operating on all the destinations that people might want to go to, because it's only 189 destinations, whereas SAS is operating in the Scandinavian area, so it might be cheaper if they had the supported airline by the government. It might be cheaper for people, and people might want to travel there more.
And I guess you could argue that the employment of, if you didn't support SAS or those companies, you're losing however many jobs there are employed in SAS, and they've been around for such a long time, like what, I think 40 years more than Ryanair. So if you just kind of left them behind, all you'd be swamped with is the low-cost carriers like Ryanair and EasyJet, the newer airlines that come about.
I think the employment bit's very important to governments. It doesn't play well, does it, to make more people redundant and for a national carrier to go out, and I think reputation as well. Yeah. Anybody else got anything they want to add?